In a stunning twist behind palace walls, Princess Catherine uncovered and dismantled Queen Camilla's boldest scheme yet, a secret plan to secure a powerful title for her son, Tom Parker Bowles. What followed was a silent but deadly battle for the crown's future, leaving Camilla cornered and furious. Camilla's secret plan to put her son in line for the throne. It was a scheme whispered about only in the most guarded palace corridors, a bold, dangerous plan that could have rewritten the shape of the British monarchy. Behind the heavy doors of Highgrove and Clarence House, Queen Camilla was said to be working towards something unprecedented, securing a royal future for her son, Tom Parker Bowles. Legally, Tom could never inherit the throne. He was born outside the royal bloodline, and centuries of tradition have made the line of succession untouchable. But Camilla's strategy wasn't about the throne itself. Insiders claim she aimed to give her son a powerful, hereditary dukedom, a title so steeped in prestige and influence that it would place him permanently within the monarchy's inner circle, and potentially give his descendants political weight for generations. Her plan, as sources describe, was cleverly disguised. It would be framed to the public not as a power grab, but as modernization, a progressive step to reflect the evolving nature of the royal family. Camilla allegedly believed she could soften public opinion with subtle public relations campaigns, positioning Tom as a respected figure with a history of charitable work and cultural contributions. The most sensitive discussions reportedly happened far from prying eyes. Private weekends at Highgrove, away from William and Catherine's oversight, became the setting for Camilla's lobbying. Over quiet dinners, she is said to have pressed King Charles, highlighting Tom's supposed value to the monarchy and the new chapter they could present together. But her ambitions didn't go unnoticed. Some senior courtiers warned that such a move could be seen as rewriting royal bloodlines for personal gain. They cautioned that even the perception of nepotism could ignite a constitutional storm, threatening the stability of Charles's reign. One advisor reportedly told a colleague, "If she pushes this through, it will look like she's trying to build her own dynasty within the crown." Still, Camilla pressed on, quietly networking with sympathetic figures in politics and culture. Rumor has it that she even explored historical precedents where royal consorts elevated their relatives, hoping to frame Tom's promotion as part of a long, if controversial, tradition. The stakes could not have been higher. The monarchy was still navigating fragile public trust after decades of scandals, many tied directly or indirectly to Diana's legacy. For William and Catherine, anything that threatened the direct succession through Prince George was more than just political maneuvering. It was an attack on their children's rightful inheritance. And while Camilla believed her campaign was hidden behind layers of discretion, the truth was that the plan's shadows were already stretching into places she didn't expect, including Catherine's own network of trusted eyes and ears. How? Catherine discovered the plot. The first signs didn't come from a scandalous leak or a whispered warning in a grand hall. They came quietly, through Catherine's own careful web of connections. According to palace insiders, it began with a conversation between a close aide in the Duchy of Cornwall's advisory board and one of Catherine's senior staff. The aide mentioned unusual discussions around certain royal estates and future title allocations. There was nothing outright incriminating, but there was something odd about how often Camilla's son's name appeared. Catherine, who has a reputation for noticing patterns others miss, began looking closer. She directed her team to discreetly monitor Camilla's public patronages and engagements. It didn't take long to see it. Tom Parker Bowles was appearing in places that made no obvious sense. He was linked to events traditionally reserved for working royals, quietly positioned alongside influential donors, and photographed at gatherings connected to cultural institutions tied to the monarchy. Her concerns deepened when royal charity records showed funding proposals that, while never naming Tom outright, appeared to align perfectly with his professional interests. To Catherine, it looked like groundwork being laid, slowly, carefully, to raise his public profile in royal-adjacent spaces. Not wanting to jump to conclusions, she reached out to Princess Anne, whose sharp instincts and long service had made her one of the most trusted voices in the family. In a private conversation, Anne reportedly admitted she had noticed similar moves and suspected Camilla had long-term intentions for her son's position. From there, Catherine's investigation became more deliberate. She tapped into her network within the royal charities, asking trusted allies to flag anything unusual. The same pattern kept surfacing, Tom being inserted, subtly but deliberately, into spaces that could pave the way for a formal royal elevation. By the time Catherine met with her constitutional and legal advisors, the picture was clear enough to act. She knew that if Camilla's plan moved forward, it could cause irreversible damage, not just to her children's future within the monarchy, but to the public's already fragile trust. Still, she also knew she had to be strategic. Acting too soon could alert Camilla and give her time to tighten her alliances. Catherine would need to gather proof, build support, and move with the precision of someone who understood that in the palace, one wrong step could undo everything. The stage was set for a silent battle within the royal family, one that would pit Camilla's ambition against Catherine's resolve. And in that battle, the next moves would determine the future shape of the crown itself. The stakes for the monarchy. From the moment Catherine pieced together Camilla's intentions, she understood this wasn't just palace intrigue. It was a direct challenge to the very foundation of the British crown. If the plan succeeded, it wouldn't just alter the shape of the royal household. It could undermine centuries of tradition that had kept the monarchy intact. The line of succession is sacred. It is built strictly on royal bloodline, passed through generations without compromise. For Camilla to try to place Tom Parker Bowles in a position of hereditary influence, no matter how cleverly disguised, would be nothing short of rewriting history. The implications for Prince George, next in line after William, were profound. Any new hereditary title with strong influence in royal affairs could blur the path ahead for George, creating a parallel power base that might weaken his future reign. It was, in essence, a challenge to the Wales children's inheritance. Palace advisors knew it too. One senior courtier warned that if the public caught wind of what was being attempted, they would see it as self-serving manipulation at the highest level. The crown's fragile image, already bruised by past scandals and the lingering shadow of Diana's story, could crumble under the weight of such accusations. The risk wasn't only domestic. The British monarchy's standing on the world stage relies on continuity, stability, and trust. Introducing a figure like Tom into the royal hierarchy could unsettle Commonwealth realms, invite constitutional challenges, and even raise questions in Parliament about the monarchy's modern relevance. Historians drew dangerous parallels to the abdication crisis of 1936, when Edward VIII gave up the throne for Wallis Simpson. That moment had shaken the monarchy to its core. Now, critics feared Camilla's plan could ignite a modern-day constitutional scandal that would rival it. For William and Catherine, the stakes were not just institutional, they were personal. Every headline about royal succession carried an unspoken promise to the people that the next chapter of the monarchy would be written by Diana's bloodline. Allowing Camilla to plant her own family into the heart of that chapter would feel, to many, like a betrayal of that promise. It was clear to Catherine that if this plan wasn't stopped, the monarchy's future and her own children's rightful place in it could be permanently damaged. The time to act was now, and her first moves would have to be precise, discreet, and unshakably loyal to tradition. Catherine's first moves to block Camilla. Catherine's strategy began the way all effective palace operations do, quietly. There would be no public confrontation, no sudden announcements. Instead, she would gather proof, build alliances, and move so carefully that Camilla wouldn't realize she was being outmaneuvered until it was too late. Her first step was to document everything. Every unusual public appearance involving Tom Parker Bowles, every charity link, every funding proposal that hinted at positioning him closer to royal power was noted, logged, and cross-checked. Catherine knew that in the monarchy, evidence was power, and she intended to have enough to convince both Charles and the senior courtiers. Next, she moved to strengthen her alliances. She reached out to Princess Anne, a trusted figure whose blunt honesty and respect for tradition made her a natural ally. Sophie, Duchess of Edinburgh, was brought into the loop, along with a handful of senior palace staff who had no love for Camilla's ambitions. In private meetings with William, Catherine ensured they presented a united front. There would be no cracks for Camilla to exploit. William agreed wholeheartedly, seeing the threat for what it was, not just to George, but to the moral standing of the crown itself. Catherine also understood the power of public perception. Without revealing the plan, she subtly began shaping the narrative in the press. She leaned into her image as the defender of tradition, making public appearances that celebrated the royal bloodline and its history. Speeches and interviews highlighted the importance of preserving the legacy for future generations. All the while, she kept her actions discreet. Camilla, confident in her own maneuvering, reportedly had no idea a counter-strategy was in motion. Catherine's discipline was key. In palace politics, a leak could derail everything, and she knew Camilla would pounce on any sign of open opposition. By the time her preparations were complete, Catherine had both the evidence and the allies she needed. The stage was set for a confrontation that would happen not in public, but in the most guarded rooms of the royal residences, where history is often decided far from the cameras. The moment to act was approaching, and Catherine was ready to meet it head-on. Camilla's reaction when she suspected opposition. At first, Camilla thought her plan was untouchable. She'd been laying the groundwork quietly, avoiding obvious moves that could draw suspicion. But in the rarefied air of the palace, shifts in behavior are noticed fast, and it didn't take long before she began to sense something was wrong. The first warning sign came at a family gathering. Normally, William and Catherine were polite, if not warm, toward her. But this time, their manner was cool, distant, the small talk short, the smiles tighter. Camilla left the room certain they knew something. Her unease deepened when the press narrative she had been carefully cultivating, the idea of a modernized monarchy, began to crumble. Leaks appeared in the media that subtly undermined the concept. Opinion columns began warning against tampering with the bloodline. While no names were mentioned, Camilla could read between the lines. Behind the scenes, she reportedly lashed out at her aides. Sources say she accused them of failing to contain internal sabotage and not shielding her from palace gossip. One aide recalled her saying, "This is coming from inside. Someone's trying to cut me off at the knees." Her next move was to go straight to the top. Charles. In a private conversation at Clarence House, she urged him to assert his authority over William and Catherine, reminding him of their agreement to present a united front. But Charles, already aware of the brewing tension, was hesitant to escalate. His measured response only deepened her suspicion that the opposition had reached him too. Camilla's public appearances began to change. Where she once enjoyed spontaneous interactions, she now stuck closely to prepared schedules and avoided unscripted moments with the press. Body language experts later pointed to her tight jaw and clenched hands, describing them as signs of restrained frustration. The more she felt control slipping away, the more guarded she became. Allies within her circle urged patience, but Camilla wasn't used to being blindsided in her own sphere of influence. In her mind, someone, and she increasingly suspected Catherine, was waging a quiet, calculated campaign to stop her. What she didn't yet realize was that the opposition wasn't just suspicion. Catherine had been preparing her case, and soon Camilla would find herself in the middle of a showdown she couldn't control them. The high-stakes showdown behind palace doors. The confrontation came in the form of a private meeting inside Clarence House. It was a gathering so sensitive that even senior staff were kept out of the room. Present were King Charles, Prince William, Princess Catherine, and Princess Anne, along with a small circle of senior advisors. The subject, Camilla's plan for Tom Parker Bowles. Catherine went first. Calm and composed, she laid out her evidence. Documented appearances, suspicious funding proposals, and patterns of public positioning that all pointed toward the same goal: securing a hereditary title for Tom that would place him dangerously close to the heart of royal power. Her voice was steady, but her words cut deep. She reminded Charles that Diana's memory still held immense sway with the public, and that any move to tamper with succession, even indirectly, would be met with fierce backlash. The people will not accept rewriting the crown's future for personal gain, she said, her gaze locked on the king. William backed her without hesitation. His tone was sharper, warning that if the plan moved forward, public outrage could destabilize Charles's reign. "It's not just about our children," he told his father. "It's about the survival of the monarchy itself." Princess Anne, never one to soften her words, sided with Catherine. She called the proposal an insult to the crown's history, and warned it would set a precedent future generations could not undo. Charles listened in silence, visibly torn. His loyalty to Camilla was decades deep, but the evidence was undeniable, and the opposition came from the people he trusted most to protect the monarchy's future. In the end, he made the call. Any discussions of Tom's elevation were to be frozen indefinitely. For Catherine, it was a strategic victory. For Camilla, it was a humiliating defeat, one delivered not in the glare of public scrutiny, but in the quiet, controlled environment where palace power is truly decided. The meeting ended without raised voices, but the tension was palpable. As one advisor later put it, it wasn't the shouting that made it decisive. It was the finality in the room. Camilla's ambitions had hit an unmovable wall, and she knew exactly who had built it. Camilla's public meltdown. The fallout from the Clarence House meeting was immediate, and it showed. At her next high-profile charity gala, Camilla stepped onto the red carpet wearing her trademark pearls. But there was something different. The usual relaxed wave was replaced with a quick, almost mechanical gesture. Her smile? Tight and forced. The kind that photographs never forgive. Inside the venue, her mood didn't lift. Reporters noticed her avoiding eye contact with Catherine, even when the two were just a few feet apart. When asked a light-hearted question by a journalist about the next generation of royals, Camilla gave a curt reply and moved on, her press team quickly shutting down further queries. Royal watchers immediately began dissecting the footage. Body language experts pointed to clenched fists during applause, lips pressed into a thin line. and moments where her gaze seemed locked straight ahead to avoid interaction. On social media, clips went viral with captions like, "Camilla's not hiding it anymore." Behind the scenes, the tension boiled over. Aides reported being snapped at for minor mistakes, while some were pulled into closed-door meetings that ended with raised voices. One source claimed Camilla accused her staff of leaking to Catherine's circle, warning, "If I find out who's feeding them, they're gone." Within days, her next public engagement was quietly cancelled, the official explanation citing health reasons. Privately, insiders said it was a calculated retreat, a way to avoid more footage that could fuel speculation about her mood. But her frustration didn't stop there. In what some interpreted as an act of retaliation, Camilla allegedly told Charles she was considering reducing her royal workload, framing it as a matter of protecting her own well-being. To critics, it was a thinly veiled warning. Without her, parts of the king's public schedule would collapse. For Catherine, this behavior only strengthened the case against Camilla's ambitions. Public patience for palace drama was already worn thin, and a queen consort who appeared irritable, evasive, and unwilling to engage was not the image the monarchy needed. Still, Camilla's anger was far from cooled. Those close to her say she viewed Catherine's role in blocking her plan not just as political interference, but as a personal betrayal. And while she had lost this round, she wasn't about to forget who had taken the victory from her. How Catherine turned the public against the plan. Catherine knew from the start that palace politics don't just unfold in meeting rooms, they play out in the court of public opinion. And if Camilla's plan for Tom Parker Bowles was to be buried for good, she needed the people on her side. Her approach was subtle. There were no direct attacks, no explicit denials. Instead, Catherine leaned into her public image as the guardian of tradition and the embodiment of the monarchy's future. First, she increased appearances with Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis. Each outing was carefully chosen: school visits, charity events, and family-friendly occasions where the cameras would capture warm, natural moments between the Wales family. The message was clear: these are the future faces of the crown. Next came the speeches. Without naming names, Catherine began weaving in lines about the importance of preserving the direct bloodline and safeguarding the inheritance of those born to serve. These phrases resonated with royal watchers, subtly drawing a line between her children's rightful place and any outside interference. She also encouraged her media allies to highlight Diana's legacy, not just in anniversaries, but in day-to-day coverage. Stories about Diana's values, her bond with her sons, and her dedication to the people reappeared in popular magazines and news features. This created a direct emotional link between Diana's memory and Catherine's family. Meanwhile, photographs of Camilla grew colder in tone. Royal correspondents, perhaps nudged by subtle briefings, began questioning whether the queen consort was in step with the nation's mood. These small shifts built into a larger narrative. Camilla was distant. Catherine was connected. Camilla was pursuing her own interests. Catherine was defending the crown's future. By the time polls were conducted, the results were decisive. An overwhelming majority expressed support for maintaining the traditional line of succession. In focus groups, respondents spoke of their trust in William and Catherine, describing them as safe hands and true heirs. Publicly, Catherine never acknowledged the brewing battle. But inside palace walls, the shift in sentiment was undeniable. With the people firmly on her side, Camilla's plan was no longer just politically risky. It was publicly toxic. In the monarchy, perception is power. And Catherine had just ensured that the perception of her family as the rightful heirs would overshadow any whisper of alternative ambitions. The collapse of Camilla's ambition. Camilla's plan to secure a hereditary title for Tom Parker Bowles didn't end in scandal. It died in silence. Palace advisors warned that without internal support, it was doomed, and pushing ahead could trigger a parliamentary inquiry into using the monarchy for personal gain. Catherine's subtle public campaign, filled with family moments and messages about protecting the direct bloodline, locked public opinion in place. Polls showed overwhelming support for traditional succession. Even Camilla's allies withdrew, and Charles stopped mentioning the idea, letting it fade without comment. For Camilla, it was a deeply personal loss. Her vision for securing her family's place became a whispered, cautionary tale. From then on, her role narrowed to queen consort duties, watched closely by a public and a palace that had just reminded her how limited her influence truly was. Catherine's quiet victory and Camilla's resentment. Catherine emerged stronger, her role as future matriarch solidified. Courtiers now saw her as a strategic defender of the crown, while public opinion crowned her the guardian of tradition. Camilla, outwardly cordial, privately resented her. The frost between them grew. Joint appearances became rare, warmth absent. For royal watchers, the message was clear. The monarchy's future rests firmly in Diana's bloodline. Catherine ensured it stayed that way. Camilla's dream for her son collapsed under Catherine's precise, calculated defense of the royal bloodline. The queen consort was left to mask her resentment, while Catherine's quiet victory cemented her as the monarchy's true future matriarch. In this power game, Catherine proved one thing: she plays to win.